Welcome to another episode where we look at history and culture through the lens of beer. Today we're cracking open a story that might surprise you, the history of American lager. I know what you're thinking, American lager. That's pretty basic, right?
You might be surprised to learn that it's not so simple. In fact, this beer style has a surprisingly dramatic and even rebellious past. We're going to be taking a sip of history using a paper called The Inspiring and Surprising History and Legacy of American Lager Beer by Gregory Paul Casey.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So where do we even begin?
Let's rewind to the early 1800s. Now, if you were to step back in time and order a drink, it probably wouldn't have been a beer. Back then, America was a nation of hard liquor drinkers, with whiskey being the top choice.
Hold on, you're saying that the land of Budweiser and Coors Light, the home of the six-pack, actually preferred hard liquor? That's a twist I wasn't expecting.
It's true. But somewhere between the Civil War and the Spanish-American War, something fascinating happened. There's this great little anecdote from the Salt Lake City Tribune in 1904. They pointed out how during the Civil War, soldiers would leave trails of whiskey flasks behind. But fast forward a few decades to the Spanish-American War and the Boxer Rebellion, and those trails were made of, beer bottles.
That's a pretty clear picture of how much things changed just from what people were drinking.
Absolutely. And if we look at the numbers, the shift becomes even more dramatic. Between 1840 and 1893, beer consumption per capita in the U.S. increased over 11 times, while spirit consumption was cut in half. By the 1890s, people were already calling lager the nation's national beverage.
So how did this underdog lager rise to such fame?
It wasn't just any lager, though. The beer that captured America's heart was a uniquely American style. The Adjunct lager. Imagine a lighter, brighter beer brewed with additions like rice and corn alongside the usual barley.
Rice and corn and beer. That does sound different from the traditional German or European lagers I've tried.
Exactly. It was a pretty radical departure from those all-malt brews that were the norm in Europe. In fact, if you can imagine European brewers back then hearing about adding rice and corn to their carefully crafted recipes, you'd probably see some shocked faces.
I can only imagine. So what was it about this American-style lager that took off?
Well, for starters, it was all about taste. Americans wanted a lighter, more refreshing beer, something that suited the climate, especially during those hot summers. Plus, think about that classic American image of ice-cold beer. European beers of the time just couldn't handle being chilled like that they'd turn cloudy. But American Adjunct lager could hold that brilliant clarity even at icy temperatures.
That makes sense. A crisp, cold beer on a hot day definitely sounds appealing. But I'm guessing there's more to the story than just taste preferences.
You're right, it was also about making the most of what was available. Professor Dr. Adolf Kluss, a director at the very prestigious Royal and Imperial Brewers Academy of Vienna, made some interesting observations about American brewing. He noted that the American six-row barley, a key ingredient, had a higher protein content than its European counterpart.
So American brewers had to adapt to what they had.
Exactly. Rice and corn weren't just about creating a lighter taste, they also helped balance out that higher protein content in the barley and maintain that crystal clear appearance even when ice cold, which was becoming a hallmark of the American style. It was a brilliant innovation born from necessity.
So American brewers were basically pioneers experimenting and coming up with something truly unique to their land.
You could say that, but as with any pioneering story, there were challenges, and this one had a particularly dramatic twist. This wasn't just about brewing beer, it was about a battle for the very definition of beer, a fight that went all the way to Congress.
What, a political battle over beer? This is getting good.
Oh, it absolutely did. From 1887 to 1912, the American brewing industry faced one challenge after another, all because of those rice and corn additions. Powerful groups wanted to impose what they called an American Reinheitsgebot, essentially a strict law limiting beer ingredients to just malt, hops, water, and yeast.
So they wanted to outlaw these new American-style lagers, but why go to such lengths?
We'll follow the money, as they say. The malting industry, the folks who supplied barley malt, saw these adjunct lagers as a threat. Brewers were turning to rice and corn, and the malting industry saw their profits shrinking.
So they tried to use the law to protect their business.
Exactly. Several bills were introduced in Congress, each one trying to put the squeeze on adjunct lagers. They wanted strict regulations, special labels. Imagine seeing adulterated slapped on a beer label just because it had rice or corn in it.
That's crazy. So how did the American brewers respond to this attack? Did they just give in?
Not at all. They weren't about to let anyone dictate what they could brew or how they could cater to American tastes. The brewers fought back, and they did it in a really clever way.
All right, spill the tea. What was their strategy?
They decided to fight fire with fire, or in this case, misinformation with information. They launched a two-pronged attack. First, they set out to educate Congress and the public about the science behind adjunct lagers.
So they wanted to show that there was more to these beers than just cost-cutting measures.
Absolutely. They wanted to demonstrate that these weren't inferior beers. They were a result of innovation and a response to both the American climate and the desire for a lighter, more refreshing style.
It sounds like they were ahead of their time in a way.
You could say that. And for their second move, they exposed the financial motivations behind the whole Reinheitsgebot push.
Classic. So who were the key players in this beer battle?
The United States Brewers Association, or USBA, took the lead. They published this powerful booklet packed with arguments against these bills.
I'm guessing they didn't hold back.
Not one bit. They brought in some heavy hitters to make their case. Dr. Francis Wyatt, a well-respected brewing scientist, eloquently defended the scientific advancements that adjunct brewing represented. He explained how it allowed brewers to create beers that met the demand for brilliant, clear beers, something that European brewers were actually struggling with at the time.
So in a way, they were pushing the boundaries of brewing science and technology?
They were. And then there was William Miles, the president of the USBA. He took on that adulteration argument head on. He pointed out that rice was actually more expensive than malt at the time, so it wasn't about cutting corners, it was about using the right ingredients for the desired result. He even revealed that rice was already being used by some European brewers in beers like Pilsner, of all things.
That's a pretty ironic twist.
Right. And then there's Anton Schwartz, considered the father of adjunct brewing in the U.S. He had a simple but powerful argument. De gustibus non est disputandum, which basically means there's no disputing taste.
So their argument was, if people like it, why make a law against it?
Exactly. It all boiled down to consumer preference. The brewers were fighting for the right to cater to what their customers wanted and for the freedom to innovate in their craft. And there's one more unsung hero in this story. Dr. Robert Wall, a prominent brewing scientist who was fiercely passionate about defending the American brewing tradition.
What role did he play in all of this?
Well, in 1908, he attended a meeting with the Secretary of Agriculture, and he didn't mince words. He boldly declared that all malt beer has become, in the minds of the Brewers' Committee, almost extinct in America.
He was basically saying, get over it all. Malt beer is a thing of the past here.
Pretty much. And in a moment that really captures the tension of this whole debate, a Pure Food Commissioner actually suggested they erect a tombstone for all malt beer with the inscription Hic jacet cerevisia maltae, which is Latin for here lies all malt beer.
Wow, they were really serious about this, weren't they?
Yeah.
But in the end, did all this effort pay off? Did American adjunct lager survive?
It did. Their combined efforts, along with some clever legal maneuvering, ensured that American brewers held on to the freedom to use the ingredients of their choice. And that victory had a lasting impact not just on American brewing, but also on the craft beer scene we know and love today.
It's incredible to think that something as seemingly simple as a beer style has such a complex and even dramatic history.
It really does. It's a testament to the power of innovation, standing up for what you believe in, and the importance of consumer choice in shaping industries.
It makes you appreciate that beer is more than just a drink. It's a reflection of culture, history, and even politics.
Absolutely. So next time you find yourself enjoying a cold American lager,
Yeah.
take a moment to appreciate the brewers and scientists who came before us, who fought so hard for the right to brew the beers we enjoy today.
They were like the rebels of the beer world, paving the way for all the creativity and variety we see today. So what does this whole story tell us about how consumer preferences can shape entire industries?
Well, it's clear that consumer demand is a powerful force for change.
It makes sense. If people aren't buying what you're selling, you have to adapt or risk going out of business.
Exactly. And the story of American lager shows that brewers who listen to their customers and respond to their tastes have a better chance of success. It's like any business, really.
But it's not just about following trends, right? Brewers also need to be innovators, to introduce new ideas and flavors that people might not even know they want yet.
That's a great point. It's about finding that balance between meeting current demand and pushing boundaries, being visionaries. And the American brewers of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, they were masters of that balance. They knew what their customers wanted, but they also weren't afraid to experiment and challenge conventions.
And as a result, they created a beer style that became a national icon. It's almost like a symbol of American ingenuity and adaptability.
It is. And it's also a reminder that even something as familiar as a beer style can have a rich and complex history, a story that's woven into larger social, cultural, and even political narratives.
It's fascinating to think about how different things could have been. If those Reinheitsgebot bills had passed, who knows what American beer would be like today?
We might be known for our hearty all-malt brews instead of those light and refreshing lagers. Or maybe something entirely different emerged. Perhaps a whole other style would have risen to fame.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think about how close we came to having a completely different beer landscape in America.
It really is. But what we know for sure is that this fight for adjunct lager was a turning point in American brewing history. It established the freedom of brewers to use ingredients of their choice, and it set the stage for the experimentation and innovation that define the industry today.
It's a legacy that's still inspiring brewers today, both large and small, to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the world of beer.
And it reminds us that even the beers we think we know well, like that humble American lager, have these incredible stories behind them. Tales of innovation and resilience and even political intrigue.
So the next time we crack open a cold one, let's take a moment to appreciate the brewers and scientists who came before us, who fought so hard for the right to brew the beers we enjoy today.
Absolutely. Here's to the pioneers, the rebels, and the innovators who make the world of beer so fascinating.
Cheers to that. And that brings us to the end of our exploration of American lager. We hope you enjoyed this little journey through history and culture, told through the lens of beer.
If you found this story as captivating as we did, be sure to subscribe for more. We're always on the hunt for fascinating stories hidden within the world of beer.
We'll be back soon with another dive into the history and culture behind your favorite brews. Until then, cheers.